Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Coffee Break, and welcome back to the Coffee Cast, where today we will be brewing up the metagame. This is going to be a game from my amateur attack show a night ago. And what happens here, we have a PvP, and Dark Blue, spawning on the right-hand side here on GSL Abyssal City, had this really nice PvP strategy that he wanted to work on, practice a little bit. Dark Blue is a high Masters Protoss player, as is Exile Soul, so I thought this would be a good time to look at this game and just trying to explain what he's doing, why I liked it especially. So what this build is it's going to be built pretty much, you know, it's a buy time to get your big army up. Now, in the end of Protoss, what is the army that you want to have? You're going to want to have your Colossus and your Archons. The Colossus, Archons, Blink Stalkers, few Immortals mixed in, and this build is going to allow us to get to that late game composition fairly easily. Now, I do want to make a disclaimer. I'm purely looking over at Dark Blue's side of things. I don't want to talk about how Exile Soul reacts to these things, because there's you know, a couple slip-ups here, a couple slip-ups there, and you know, all in all, it could have been defended a little bit better, but it's still, the overall build order still holds true. It has a great consistency to it, and so I just wanted to give you guys an idea of what's going on. So, the opener is going to be pretty much standard stuff here. Nothing is going to be super crazy out of place here. Just speed it up and nice and fast here. And I apologize if it gets a little laggy once I start going at, you know, ×8 and stuff, you know, kind of to be expected. So you're seeing, you know, all sorts of info and all sorts of typing and talking in the chat. Let's go just a little bit further here. And that's just because they were talking much before the game and kind of continuing on the conversation now. First of all, of course, you're going to be getting these two gas geysers in the main base. I mean, pretty much for anything but a 4-gate, you're just not going to need both of those gas geysers unless you're doing something, you know, super greedy, risky, and just trying to, you know, take like a fast nexus. But that's what we're going to be seeing here. We are going to be seeing, here's the first point I would like to make, a 1-gate Robo build. 1-gate Robo. Now, the units that you get out of your gateway in the early game aren't going to be the biggest deal. I don't care if you do, you know, 5,000 zealots and then, you know, whatever. Don't let my exaggeration throw you off. I don't care if you do, you know, the 3 Stalker opening. I don't care if you do Zealot, Stalker, Sentry like we're seeing Dark Blue do here. All I want to make note of is that it's a 1-gate Robo up into 2 gateways. Out of this robotics facility, as soon as you get the money for it, start getting your first Immortal out. First Immortal. Very important here that you get those Immortals coming out fairly quickly. Apparently, we do have the Observer coming first for Dark Blue. That's no problem. Observer, Immortal, whatever you feel is comfortable. If you don't have, if we're seeing right here, we're in Dark Blue's cam, you see that he has not at all whatsoever scouted his opponent. If that's going to be the case for you, please get the Observer first. But if you had good scouting, if you know what exactly is going on at your opponent's side of the base, at your opponent's side of the map, then you might feel a little bit more comfortable going for that Immortal first, knowing that Dark Templar, if he's doing some sort of Dark Templar rush, can't really be on your side of the map until 8 minutes, 8:30. So, you know, Observer, Immortal, Observer. Just get 2 Immortals and an Observer. After the second Immortal is finished, let's speed it up just a little bit here. After the second Immortal is finished, apparently we're getting another Observer because the first one died and we still don't really have much of an idea of what's going on. We saw the expansion, that's good for this build. We saw that there's the robotics, we saw the robotics bay going up right here. If you take a look over at Exile Soul's side of the map, he is getting Colossus coming out. But this robotics bay here, I would like to note, is not going to be used immediately for Colossus. It's going to be something a little bit more interesting than that. And that's what I love about this, is it kind of deviates from your standard stuff. I mean, it's not going to be super boring. So the robotics bay finishes, and what do we do? As soon as that robotics bay finishes, you start Gravitic Drive, which is the Warp Prism movement speed, and start a Warp Prism, throwing down the Chrono Boost on the Gravitic Drive, because that does take a little bit longer than your Warp Prism is going to take. Going to take a little bit longer. Now, if with your beautiful scouting, I would like to make note, this is something that Dark Blue doesn't really scout out, so it's not too big of a deal. But if with your wonderful scouting with those observers that you got on the map, you notice that your opponent is going for double forge upgrades, which in Protoss vs. Protoss is not the most popular thing in the world. if you notice your opponent is going for double forge upgrade, you really need to get the +1 weapons upgrade, and I will explain that in just a little bit, but it will be imperative that you get the +1 weapons upgrade for this build if your opponent's going for a fairly quick 1-1 upgrade. So Warp Prism. What do we do with that Warp Prism? Well, we have the speed, we have those 2 Immortals. We are going to load the Immortals up in the Warp Prism and go to do some double Immortal harassment. And right here, this is where I want to stop and take a couple of moments real quick to explain the upgrades thing, to explain what exactly is going on. So, first of all, the upgrades. The Immortals, since the probes are not an armored unit, they do 28 damage plus 2 for each additional upgrade. The probes, obviously, 40 health, 20 shields, 20 health, no innate armor. If your opponent is going for a fast +1/+1, then the probes will take 3 shots rather than 2 shots from these Immortals to die. So the Immortal, the point of the Immortal drop is the fact that A, you can kill buildings very quickly if there's like no reaction, but the main thing is that you can kill probes with 1 attack volley. So if you focus fire with these 2 Immortals, you will be able to kill the probes very quickly. Get a quick 3 or 4 probes before any sort of real reaction comes from your opponent, and maybe if you're feeling really adventurous, snipe a pylon. Or if you're feeling really risky, go for building, but the main thing about this build is killing the probes. So if your opponent's going for a fast +1/+1, if you see the double forge, which you will not too often in Protoss vs. Protoss, you do need to get that +1 weapons upgrade before you do any sort of attack like this. Now the point of this attack, like I was saying, kill some of your opponent's workers off. Also, you want to pin your opponent's army back in their base. If you are harassing them with 2 Immortals, especially, more than pretty much any other harassment, this is like dropping Stim Marines and Marauders in your opponent's base, you'll be able to melt buildings and probes very quickly. So if your opponent is out in the middle of the map, for instance, and you come into their base with 2 Immortals, you're going to be able to do massive amounts of damage. I mean, you're going to be doing 50 damage a shot per Immortal, mind you. So, you know, an attack volley of 100 damage to buildings. And so if they don't have the reaction, if they're out across the map, they will not, I mean, they're just going to lose so much, and it's going to force them to stay back and stay on the defensive side of things. What that's going to allow you to do, what we're seeing Dark Blue do it right here, it's going to allow you to actually secure a 3rd base before, you know, 13, 14 minutes, which is kind of rare in the Protoss vs. Protoss matchup. Back over in Iron Soul's base, maybe, you know, a little bit less of an important thing. He's going to start going for Colossus here. Alternatively, you could go for Charge-Lot Archon first if you wanted. I think he's going for Colossus because he scouted the Colossus of his opponent and just didn't want to fall too far behind in that right. That's not the biggest deal, but one thing I do want to note is the fact that we have the Twilight Council somewhere around here. I'm not sure where it is. There it is, out front. Do not go immediately for double Colossus production. Do Colossus production and Twilight Council, or Twilight Council and single Colossus production. Just kind of some sort of variant of that. Going back to the game here, we're going to see the Immortals. Oop, I'm on the everybody cam. There we go. There we go. I'm now back over on Dark Blue's cam. Now we're just going to see he's going to do a little bit of damage here. He's going to harass. He's going to have some really nice micro here. We're going to see on and off this Warp Prism. It's just going to be super pesky, coming in, doing damage, killing probe, picking back up. And some beautiful micro here. As soon as those Immortals are low on shield, picks them back up, gets them away. That's not the biggest deal in the world. All I want to note is the fact that he is keeping up with this harassment. And if we check out the army for Iron Soul, he is indeed pinned back in his base. He's forced to keep Stalkers over here on the ledge to defend against the dropship from coming back in. In the meantime, he has part of his army up front. So this also is forcing Soul to split his army up. And Soul not able to take a 3rd base because he cannot keep all his army in one nice big ball, which is really what you want in this PvP matchup. He has his army spread out, you know, about 1/3 of his army up at the north side of his base, and about 2/3 of his army is sitting at the front. Well, we need a little bit more time here. You know, this 3rd base is just kind of getting established. We only have 57 workers of about the 70 to 75 that we want. So we need to buy ourselves a little bit more time to get this nice, big, pretty Colossus Archon Blink Stalker power ball up for the late game composition. So what are we going to do? We are going to follow up our harassment with, guess what? More harassment. Ooh, cool. That's a nice little animation I managed to pause on there. It is going to be the Dark Shrine coming up. This is going to allow us to follow up our double Immortal drop with Dark Templar. And plus, those Dark Templar are going to serve dual purpose later on in being our Archons. Always, always, always have more than one purpose for any particular thing you're doing. Dark Blue sees that the Stalkers are sitting there waiting to catch this Warp Prism off guard. So he's just going to do a general swing around, drop over here in the natural expansion, going to pick back up. And once again, just keeping up with this harassment. Doesn't, he's not doing a ton of damage. I mean, even if we come over to the Workers Kill tab, we see, yeah, he's gotten 12 Workers. That's not bad. It's 76 to 36 Harvesters. Once again, I don't want to focus on Soul's reaction. He hasn't been building Harvesters. But it's one of those things where you win a little engagement here, you win a little engagement there, and we can see that's definitely coming into play here on the Units Lost tab. And in the end, it really starts adding up more and more over time. Really starts adding up. It's one of those things where, if you just get all your little victories, eventually you're going to have such a big lead in the end that you will end up winning. So we're going to be trying to push out across the map here, but with the Dark Templar on the map, it's going to be fairly difficult, difficult for Soul to do any real damage, especially once again, Colossus numbers fairly comparable at this point in time because Blue just has such a large economy advantage. We're seeing this drop finally getting cleaned up. But, well, I guess not completely. And what's happening in the meantime? Well, Soul's out across the map, doing a little bit of damage, trying to poke at Blue's army. Blue just has this counterattack pylon set in place, warps in a couple of Dark Templar into the natural expansion of Soul, and going to harass, harass, harass. Now you're going to see a bunch more text coming up here. Just kind of ignore that. This is really where we can kind of end this, but I'm going to go ahead and, yeah, I'll go ahead and finish this game. It's not too much longer. We're going to go ahead and finish out this game, just, so I don't keep you guys in suspense. So this has allowed us to take our third base fairly safely. We have a nice Colossus count. We have Archons coming into the army. We have, if I could get one, we have Charge ready. We have Blink ready. We have 2-0 right now. I mean, we just have this beautiful composition, beautiful upgrades, and this is pretty. So we're just going to kind of see. This base is going to get assaulted a little bit by Soul, but he's pretty much just going to get demolished in the final engagement by this beautiful, beautiful army composition that Dark Blue was able to get up. We see 77 probes for Blue. He's done quite a bit of economic damage, especially with those Dark Templar in the end. I think he comes in once or twice more with some additional Dark Templar. And in the end, Dark Blue's just going to kind of push out across the map and pretty much obliterate his opponent. Once again, just securing his victory here. Had a beautiful flanking angle with these Archons and stuff. And bam, game over. So, just to reiterate a little bit, what this build allowed us to do was to buy time in the early game. The double Immortal drop in the early game forced Soul's army to stay back while we began taking a fairly quick third base. We added on some extra gateways, then got our charge tech as well as our Dark Templar tech to be able to do a little bit more harass while we really started getting that economy truly ramping up. And with that Dark Templar tech as well, we were able to start going into that charged out Archon Colossus. It's one of those things where everything just starts adding up in the end. You already have the Robo and the Robo Bay in place to get the Warp Prism Speed upgrade. You have the Twilight Council to get charge up. You then can go into the Dark Templar to get the Archons. I mean, it's just a nice little flow of things. If you look down in the description of this video, I will have relative the kind of just like the relative notes that I wrote down for this. I don't have any specific build order. I don't have 9-10 pylon at 13 to 18 gateway. I don't have any of that stuff, but I will just have your basic notes that you'll need to be able to get an idea of this. Also, I will have a link to the VOD of the game from Amateur Attack. And if you go about 6 minutes into the VOD, that's when this game is. It was the first game of the night. If you like this video, please subscribe and comment. I do really like doing these instructional videos. Like I've gotten great feedback on them. Previously, I did a 3-gate Robo, one for basic players, as well as a heavy airplay from White Raw versus Lava Whistler in PvZ. And I got good feedback, so I would like to start doing more of these as time progresses. If you have any concerns about this, any questions, feel free to let me know, and I will try to get back to you on those. And thanks for tuning in, folks. Until next time, this is Coffee Break with Brewing Up the Metagame.